Hi, Big V here. We're talking teams. Today we're going to talk about one of the hardest things to do, and that is to deal with a difficult client. Now, raise your hand or go down in the chat box and give me an example of a difficult client. How do you define difficult client? Somebody who can't make a decision, a couple who argues about every house you show them. What is a difficult client to you? Someone who gets under contract and then changes their mind constantly? Is it possible that the client may not be as difficult if we're better at dealing with people that are challenging, or even understanding our level of emotional intelligence or even behavioral styles of the people that we're working with? The more time we take to understand human behavior and emotional intelligence, the better we are at diffusing situations or working with people that may be more difficult to others, may come across as end up being some of your best friends. I love challenges, and challenges give us the ability to separate us from everyone else. As we watch this video, I'm going to share with you not only an emotional intelligence wheel, I'm also give you a free disc profile where you can go in and take a full disc to see what your behavioral style is and give you the ability to really understand how emotional intelligence works. I'm also going to give you a link to one of my favorite emotional intelligence podcasts called Strategies for Turbulent Times, put together by the one and only Dr. Cathy Greenberg, a pioneer in emotional intelligence, and her husband, Matt Werner, who is a recent retiree of the SEAL teams for many, many years. As a leader in emotional intelligence, these operators at different levels in life, in business and military, have learned to incorporate emotional intelligence, not just to defuse situations, but to develop relationships, help our warriors reacclimate in lives. It's a great podcast and totally worth the listen. So let's talk about how to actually work with a difficult client. The first thing I'm going to share with you is I'm going to share with you what we call our DISC profiles. And what is DISC? It's a D-I-S-C. Most of you have heard of DISC, but most of you don't understand really what to do with it. Let me give you an example. I'm going to first tell you what a D is, an I is, an S is, and a C is, and then I'll give you an example of how I would approach each one differently in a sales situation, like a listing presentation. So a D is someone who is going to be direct, and I'm looking at my notes and I'll share these with you. A D stands for dominance. They're results focused. They are direct and they're competitive. They want an answer, they want it now. I am a high D, by the way, if you ever want to know what my behavioral style is. The second trait that is very, very common in real estate is a high I. These are our influencers, our interactors. They're the life of the party. I think the I's don't even think the party starts until they get there, and they like to announce themselves. Hey, the party's here, let's go. I'm here now, let's get this party going. And it might have been going for 2 hours, but they didn't even think it was a party until they showed up because they believe they have so much energy to contribute to that situation. The S stands for stability or steadiness. It also comes as sincerity, patient. They're modest. They're more amiable, controlled, thoughtful. I often think of the S's as the giraffe in the Serengeti. They have no natural enemies. Don't confuse them with being weak, though. The giraffe is the only animal that can crush the skull of a lion if you back him into a corner or threaten their family. An S is very much like that. The C are compliance. They're the detail-oriented. They're the engineers. They're the ones who love the spreadsheets. If you think you're going to give them some information they don't know, they've already done the research, you need to assume they have. So let me give you an example. When I meet somebody, and what's really interesting is when you go into a home for the very first time, you'll have a couple, and they're going to represent different behavioral styles. They say that opposites attract. It's actually true. I'm a high DI. My wife is a super high SC. So my kids, when they want something done quickly, they come to me. When they want someone to listen, they go to my wife. Very different skill sets, very different behavioral styles, and it actually works. Two Ds often find themselves in competitive situations and have a hard time both working in that relationship. Doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means you have to be adaptable. The ability of a salesperson to understand the behavioral style of the people they're selling to is the highest level of respect. It's when I can change my style that is dominant for me to make the communication more comfortable for you. So when I care about you enough to make the environment comfortable, that's when you know you have a salesperson who really understands that it's more about the relationship than it is about the dollar. When you take the time to understand who you're selling to. So if I walk into a home and before I get to the door, somebody opens the door and says, "Hey, welcome, you're here, the realtor. Great to see you. What are we talking about?" That's a high I. If somebody answers the door and they're a little bit more reserved and they slowly open the door and say, "Hi, are you Verl?" I go, "Yeah, I am." They go, "Well, come on in." And they don't have that high level of energy. It's a good chance you're dealing with a high S. When you walk in to the kitchen, mention, if you see a stack of papers that's all printed out, good chance you're dealing with a high C because they've done their research. When you walk in and somebody greets you with, "Hi, Verl, I'm Dave, nice to meet you. I just want to give you an idea of what the property is going to sell for, and I want you to tell me exactly what you're going to charge me to do it. I know I'm dealing with a high D." And they're direct, they're to the point, they want the answers, they want decisiveness, and they want to move forward. Understanding all of those things and taking all that into account just in the approach and greeting helps you then decide how you're going to present to this couple. If I've got a high C, I'm going to give them analytical data. I'm going to give them the time to think about it and process it. When an analytical says I want to think about it, they actually want to do more research. When a high I says I want to think about it, it means you haven't given them enough information to make a decision. When a high D says I want to think about it, they probably mean no. And so you have to be careful with the objection, "I want to think about it," based on the behavioral style of the person you're talking to. So if I'm dealing with a high D, they want to see that I've got a plan, that I've thought through all of the things, that I have a solution. I'm going to get to the end, but I'm going to have the data to back it up. A high D will respect that. They want you to answer their questions, and you can get right to it. And you can often work with a high D, get them under contract, and have them list in a one-call close. A high I, we're going to talk about who knows who. What do our kids do? What do we have in common? The relationship and building the fun and energy around people that are in common are going to be so much more important than the data. If they like you and they trust you, they're more likely to choose you. With the high S's, we're going to talk about the 5-star reviews. We're going to talk about proof of concept. We're going to share the core values that make us different from everybody else. We're going to give them an opportunity. We use words like, "As we work together to sell your home," "As we consider every offer, I'll make sure you're involved in the communication process." We put them at ease to not feel like they're going to be run over by the high D that we are. So you have to use different words and terminology and languaging when you're dealing with a high S. With a high C, we're going to review the data together. I always ask them, what have they determined their price should be based on the data they've researched? They've been on Zillow, they've looked at comps, they've done everything they can. And then, do I have something that can add more insight to their valuation, or is their valuation spot on? If it's spot on, I'll say, "It looks like you've done your research. Here's what I came up with, and look at this. Great minds think alike. Here's a couple things you may not have considered that could affect the price, and I want to give them some new information and give them the opportunity to enhance their research and build upon it, not make them feel less than." High D's, I's, S's, and C's are all capable of moving forward if they're presented in a way that makes them comfortable. That's the beginning of dealing with difficult people. Oftentimes, people are difficult because we haven't addressed them in a way that makes them comfortable. If you're a high analytical and the agent just wants to talk about all our friends and what we have in common, but you don't give them any data, they're going to become difficult really fast because you don't know what you're talking about. If you try and treat a high D like you would treat a high S, they're going to think that you don't have the ability to be assertive in a negotiation. If you work with a high S the way you would talk to a high D, they're not going to feel heard or listened to. And so the ability to change or adapt is the greatest level of respect. And that's how we deal with difficult people, is we put them in a situation that makes it comfortable based on their behavioral style. There are so many things we can do with behavior styles to make it comfortable for people. The last thing I want to share with you is emotional intelligence. There is a tremendous amount of research and there's a ton of information on the internet. I'll give you some links to some emotional intelligence resources, but there's tremendous amount of emotional intelligence that comes into play in understanding not only yourself, but the people that you're working with. In this emotional intelligence wheel right here, here's the key categories of emotional intelligence: self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal relationships, decision-making, and stress management. Each one of these categories determines not only your emotional intelligence, but your ability to communicate to a consumer on the other side. Self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional awareness is what your self-perception is all about. How are you in each of these areas? One of my favorite things is the assessment, where you actually can go through and do a full assessment on your own emotional intelligence. Your self-expression, the ability to express yourself, the ability to be assertive, and to have interdependence on the people that you're communicating and collaborating with. In the interpersonal, it's about your ability with emotional intelligence to have better relationships, to have and to show empathy, and to have social responsibility. Oftentimes, behavioral styles are confused with lack of social intelligence or emotional intelligence in some of these categories. In the area of decision making, it's your ability to do problem solving in a way that's effective and quick. It's reality testing and making sure that the scenarios you're putting forth actually have the probability of success. And then, of course, your impulse control. Oftentimes, high I's and high D's lack impulse control and they lack empathy. And so by understanding this in your emotional intelligence, that this is your weakness or your strength, gives you the ability to communicate more effectively with your client. And then, of course, stress management. This is, do you really have the ability to be flexible? Can you change and adapt based on the situation you're in, the people that you're working with? Do you have the ability to have stress tolerance when your back's against the wall or things aren't going as planned? Do you have the adaptability to make changes? And then, of course, the ability to have optimism. Emotional intelligence, behavioral styles are just two of the things that if you understand them, it will truly help you not only work with difficult clients, but actually help you from creating difficult clients during the sales process. I encourage you to download all the resources. Go to Dr. Greenberg's and Matt Werner's podcast and listen to the strategies for Turbulent Times podcast. It's got content, it's got information, and it has so much meat that will help you become more emotionally intelligent as you deflate those turbulent situations and those terrible, difficult clients that come your way. And oftentimes those terrible clients are the people you care about the most, and you don't want to ruin the relationship because you chose to do business with them. As a real estate agent, as an entrepreneur, we should be more skilled at dealing with the difficult people because that creates a whole new series of opportunities that other people shy away from.